So President Biden is promising to nominate a black woman to the Supreme Court by the end of February. The nominee will fill the seat of liberal Justice Stephen Breyer, who is retiring after an almost 28-year tenure. Weijia Jiang has more. Weijia, hello. So let's talk about what we know so far about the possible nominee. We know that the president has a short list. Can you give us a little more information?
Well, President Biden says he has not made up his mind yet, but we do know that this is a familiar process for the president because he oversaw the hearings for 6 Supreme Court justices when he was the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee. And now he's saying he's not only looking for the consent of the Senate, but for its advice as they help him choose who will make history.
Person I will nominate will be someone with extraordinary qualifications, character, experience, and integrity.
CBS News has learned that President Biden does have some names in mind to replace Justice Stephen Breyer. The shortlist includes federal appeals court judge Ketanji Brown Jackson, a Harvard Law School graduate and a former clerk for Breyer, and California Supreme Court Justice Leandra Kruger, a Yale Law School graduate. Then California Attorney General Kamala Harris was on the committee that confirmed her. But Congressman Jim Clyburn, a close ally of Mr. Biden's, is pushing for federal judge Michelle Childs, who graduated from the University of South Carolina School of Law. Clyburn said Childs' non-Ivy League background is an asset.
She has what I call the kind of background and experiences that we ought to have.
Democrats want to move fast to fill the seat Breyer will vacate at the end of the term this summer. A simple majority vote is enough to confirm a nominee, and it looks promising for Mr. Biden. West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin said he's open to supporting someone more liberal than he.
As far as just their philosophical beliefs, no, that will not prohibit me from supporting somebody.
But before he names a nominee to replace Justice Breyer, President Biden praised him as a model public servant who had these parting words on democracy.
My grandchildren and their children, they'll determine whether the experiment still works. And of course, I am an optimist, and I'm pretty sure it will.
President Biden said he'll also consult with leading scholars and attorneys in the selection process, adding that Vice President Kamala Harris will play a key role in advising him. For his part, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell says he will take a look at whoever the nominee is, but he also warned against outsourcing the decision to, quote, the radical left. Vlad and Anne-Marie.
So, Weijia, the good news is that President Biden has a wealth. There are a number of qualified African-American female judges in this country that the president will be able to choose from. The question that I have, though, is are you hearing it all from the White House if the president, that decision that he made to talk about putting a black female judge on the Supreme Court of the United States came during a debate? And are you feeling or are you hearing that the president feels that he might have been boxed in by that, or he is 100% full bore, full steam ahead with picking a qualified woman, which this country has never had and which many, many people would love to see, and a lot of people are demanding to see?
You're absolutely right, Vlad. Talk is one thing, actions are another, and I think that the president's actions speak for themselves with regard to this decision, because since he took office, he has nominated and installed a record number of black women as federal judges. Right. And so it's not just about, his confidence in the Supreme Court pick. He's showing his confidence, and he has talked so much before about why it's important that the courts around the country, the highest court in the land, is a reflection of what this country looks like. And that's actually a good opening for Congressman Jim Clyburn that we've already talked a little bit about, because he is pushing so hard for Michelle Childs, who is a federal judge, to be nominated. And he is lobbying. He's already spent months and months behind the scenes telling the White House that this is the right woman for the job, because everybody on that high court and all the nominees that we've heard so far have one thing in common. They have Ivy League educations.
Most of them only, Weijia, as you know, most of them from only basically Harvard and Yale. And I think what Congressman Clyburn is saying is, look, we were just talking about this, we have a number of incredible law schools in this country that produce a number of incredible lawyers and judges. And why only choose? You're telling a kid one day you can sit on the Supreme Court, you have to only go to one of these two schools?
Correct. And that's exactly why he's making the case that it's time to look elsewhere, because great minds are cultivated in many, many other places other than Ivy League schools. And so we'll see what the president decides to do. But certainly there is, I don't think just a short list, Vlad, but to your point, a long list of potential candidates. And that's why the president is, saying he's going to consult with so many people to try to make this the right decision, because whoever it is, she will make history.
Right.
Listen, before we let you go, we started off the newscast talking about this breaking news out of Pittsburgh, the bridge collapse. It just so happens that the president is heading to Pittsburgh today. I thought he was going to be talking about the supply chain issues in the economy, but something tells me he may be talking about infrastructure as well.
Well, he was always going to be talking about infrastructure, but you're right, Anne-Marie. He says that because that newly passed infrastructure law is already in place, things like the supply chain are getting some relief, which will ultimately, he says, bring down prices for people. But I do think that the timing here is really eerie, because it shows an immaculate example of just how much need there is around the country to invest in infrastructure. So the president will certainly be talking about this. The White House press secretary, Jen Psaki, already tweeted this morning to say that he's been told of the collapse in Pittsburgh and the teams are in touch. Now, what we don't know yet is whether he'll do a flyover or whether he'll travel to the scene here, but certainly he will talk about it as an example. And another thing to remember is, and you'll see Psaki's comments continue here. She's thanking the first responders and says that the president will proceed as planned for today and stay in touch with officials on the ground. Another thing I wanted to point out, though, is that, in his recent press conference, the president talked a lot. Actually, he lamented about the fact that he didn't think that the message was getting across to Americans how much this administration has already done. And he's talked about how his predecessor, 2 presidents ago, of course, former President Barack Obama didn't take enough victory laps. So he, again, wants to use this opportunity to talk about the importance of what they've already done, to highlight to people that, hey, we need help when it comes to roads and bridges. That's what you're going to get. So it is going to be a very busy day for the president, who now has another incident to point to. Excuse my fogginess a little bit. It's Friday. It was a long week. Happy Friday to you both.
Happy Friday to you, too. We understand that.
It always feels, every week these days feels like a year. So we feel it. We feel it, Weijia. And really great context in speaking of victory laps, in pointing out to our viewers that the president has appointed a record number of black female judges to the federal bench, something that he doesn't talk a lot about, but now, of course, is bubbling to the surface because of what is potentially a historic nomination that he will make. Weijia Jiang at the White House for us. Love having you, Weijia. Have a nice weekend.
You too, guys. Thanks.